Hi everyone, it's Renee Jane here, and I want to talk with you today, a little recap of how the 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat went. And I have to admit, I've been very resistant to even make this video. I think, there's a lot of reasons. One, I came home from 10 days of silence and I didn't really want to be around any social media whatsoever, let alone a video camera. So there was that. And also there was, and is just family and personal things in my life that require my attention. And so it seemed just so weird to talk about this 10 days of silence. I just couldn't get to it. I think I'm there now, but what I realize is that it was such a profound impact on me that, I'll probably be making videos that are rooted from my experience at this 10-day retreat for the next few years. Anyway, with that said, I want to say thank you to everyone who reached out to me and has been asking me about how it went and had curiosity, whether that was just out of learning for yourself or just genuinely wondering how it went for me. Thank you. And I find that there's so much I want to say here. So I wrote some notes. I have my tea. I'm just going to take a minute. If you really have interest in knowing what Vipassana is, or why you would even take on 10 days of silence, then stay tuned. I'll share more with you. I have another video I'll put below this that talks about the importance of having silence and quiet for our health. So if that's more of an interest to you, you can stay tuned for that. What I want to say first is that I've been kind of sick of the personal growth industry. One, by the way, that I've been a huge part of for like 18 years. I hired my first coach 18 years ago now. So, and sick of it in the sense, there's so many reasons, and that's not what this video is about, but just sick in the sense that there's a lot of things out there that are constantly pulling our attention to go outward. And I felt personally that it was really important for me to go more inward. And not only for me, but also to be a leader for the people in our community to look more inward. And by the way, not to say that there isn't a space for us to do both at the same time, to both do the inner work and work in a program where people can kind of help facilitate that. But I have found myself needing to get more quieter and to be more introspective and to really take a step backwards and not backwards, but a step back, step to the side, whatever way we want to put it, and just witness life, witness my life, really be with where I am with an open heart. And, just put my attention on how I'm participating in my life, in my relationships, in my work, in my purpose, and the people that I love, like everything. And so I'm very committed to making these videos, and I'm going to continue to do that. And I'm going to continue to coach and serve and help people in our community. And what I have seen more and more is that also requires me to be my own best client all at the same time. That's actually what one of my first coaches taught me 18 years ago, was that you always need to be your own best client. And so anyway, Vipassana really was about that for me. It was an opportunity to go inward and to look. So I want to just share, for those of you who don't know, Vipassana is a kind of meditation practice that allows you to observe the sensations in your body. And it's done in a very kind of systematic way. And it's also got a lot of traditions in Buddhism. Buddhism not in a religious sense, but in the idea around non-attachment or not being attached to thought, which is a whole nother conversation, so I don't want to get lost on Buddhism, but it's not a religious thing. It's just, it's kind of rooted in that from like 2,500 years ago. The Buddha did a form of Vipassana meditation. So in essence, you know, as human beings, we have craving, and a lot of that craving is very primal. And, you know, I'm not just talking about craving for food or sugar or something. I'm talking about, excuse me, craving for connection with other people, craving for connection with the self, and also, and just an acknowledgement that as humans that we require a certain level of safety that's sourced from within, from us. And so often we look outside of ourselves for that connection and that safety and that security too quickly. And we don't necessarily have it sourced coming from within us. And so what I have found as I, you know, and I'll get into my experience actually at Vipassana, but I just wanted to give you context of why you would even do it. That so many of us, most of us, have experienced pain and trauma in our lives, or emotional instability from childhood, or for some of us abuse. Like, there's all kinds of things that we have experienced, and that we really carry a lot of that in our bodies, and it builds up and builds up and builds up, and then we have physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, mental pain, and it starts to take over our lives. It's you know, it starts to become something where we wake up one day and we realize, wow, like, I'm kind of repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. So if you are somebody who's ever experienced any of that, this might be something to look into. By the way, I'll put some links below if you have an interest in checking out Vipassana. I really appreciated how it's set up on the system where you donate money and it helps the next person go. I really appreciated being there, knowing that somebody else prior to me had paid a donation and allowed me to be there, and I thought it was just beautiful. The entire 10 days is silent, and I thought that I'd have a much harder time with that than I did. I actually loved the silence, really loved it. On the 9th day, I believe it was the 9th day or 10th day, I can't recall now. It seems so long ago for some reason, but we were allowed to break our silence to speak to the people who were doing the course with us. I think there was like 30 or 40 women approximately that I was with. And I just recall like wanting to hide in my room on that day. Like, I didn't want to go out and talk. I really liked the silence so much. One of the reasons the silence is important is because the practice of Vipassana is to go inward and observe the sensations in our body without judgment, which I'll get to more in a minute. And what happens is, if you have all this exposure to talking with other people or comparing, like, how was your meditation versus my meditation? By the way, there's no reading and no journaling allowed during Vipassana. I know there were some people who did that anyway in my course. I chose not to, and I'm really glad that I didn't. I almost snuck in my journal, but I chose not to. And the reason that you want to do that is because these are like little outlets to break away from looking inward, right? Like, we don't want to necessarily look inward. We want to look outward because it's easier. And sometimes looking inward makes us have to see the pain or the shame or the craving or whatever it is. And like, that's the purpose. And so, just looking at my notes here, I want to say also, it was incredibly challenging. On day 4, I wanted to leave. First of all, I flew to this particular location that I was at, so I knew I wasn't going to leave. Like, I had very much committed to being there the whole time. I figured it was going to be a challenge. The first night, there was a big spider on my curtain in my little dorm room, bedroom. And one of the practices of Vipassana is you can't kill anything. And I don't like to usually kill spiders anyway, but like it was a big spider and I was really nervous he was gonna come get me while I was sleeping. But I just let him go and sat with the idea while I was laying in bed that he could, or she could be around. Anyway, spiders. My point is, day 4, that was hard because there was so much pain in my body from sitting in meditation. You know, you sit for about 9.5 hours every day. And I really took that seriously. I'm going to go through a couple of points on all that in a minute. And there was a lot of physical pain, but there's a lot of mental and emotional pain. And I thought that I just might break. Like the shame and the fear and the trauma that I was under on that day 4, it was very intense. I'm just being kind of vulnerable to share. So one might think like, why would you even do this? Like, I don't want that. And here's why. Because when I allowed myself to sit in what I would consider probably one of the hardest 4 days or so of excruciating, intense pain, not only physically but mentally and emotionally. And I observed it and I learned how to just be with it. Something happened that I will never forget. I basically lost my mind in the best possible way. I started to see that I was so attached to my mind, and we kind of need to lose our minds in order to be present, in order to be in this moment. And my mind was strong. It put up a fight. One of the other things that I want to share, we sit in the meditation practice, which is basically about 3 ideas. It's observing craving, aversion, or ignorance in a sense. And so as you sit in meditation, thoughts come in. It's always happening. You observe the thoughts. They go, they come back in, they go. It's kind of this ebb and flow. And then there's sensations within the body. And in Vipassana, we learn to observe those sensations. And at all times, our body is usually averse to something, or we're craving something. And so what we do is we start to learn how to not be attached to that. We learn to sit in uncertainty, which in itself is one of the most challenging aspects of life. And so I guess what Vipassana has taught me so far, and I'm still growing and learning from this, is that so much in my life, I can only speak for myself, but I know that many of you might relate, I have really ran from the pain. And I say that I'm kind of speaking on both sides of my mouth. I gave birth to my son, Manny, without any drugs. It took 48 hours of natural labor to birth Manny. And so I say that like there's an aspect of my personality that knew I needed to know how to sit in that pain of childbirth. And this is just what I wanted to do. Like a lot of people choose drugs, good for you. Like there's no judgment here. I just wanted that. I wanted to know what it felt like to sit in the pain and like overcome that. I don't know if that's crazy or not. It maybe is. But I wanted to know what would happen on the other side. And what on the other side of it was, is I felt like I could do anything after childbirth. And after Vipassana, I felt very similar. And it was almost harder than childbirth at some points. And I say that with the little notation that I have forgotten a lot of childbirth, because that's what happens to women, you forget. So, crazy. I want to delete that, because I don't want people to not go to Vipassana and think it's worse than childbirth. That's just how I feel right now, so I'll keep it. Here's some things I learned. I learned discipline. In college, there were a lot of times I slept through classes and I didn't get up in time, and I didn't follow through on what I said I was going to do. I wasn't always my word. And I compare it to college, but it was just like in this little dormitory thing you stay in. You have a roommate and you get up every morning at 4 a.m. for a 4:30 sit, and the schedule basically goes from 4 in the morning until about 9:30 at night. And you sit for 9.5 hours a day, and it's very regimented. One would almost say even cult-like if you were to observe it and not understand it, and I'm not into cults, so... but it was just like, this is what you do, this is what, you listen to at this moment, this is what, and not culty in a bad way, because I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful course, and I'm so, so happy I did it. But I did it in a way that really kind of blew myself away. Like, I woke up every single day. I never missed a meditation. I gave my all in every meditation, like it was my job. And when I wasn't meditating, I was resting, or I was stretching, or I was walking, or nourishing myself, just so I could show up for those meditations. So it's a big deal for me. So I think I saw a part of me that I didn't know I had access to. The other thing that I wrote down that was a big deal was judgment. I really found that was a big one for me. I thought, you always think that we've grown through things, and there's always more, we're great where we are and there's more to do. I didn't know that judgment was going to be such a big deal for me, because that was such a big deal a few years ago for me. It's a big deal. I was judging other women for, them sleeping in and missing a meditation. And then I would have to look at myself, right? I would have to, what am I judging about myself? I was judging myself a lot. And so a big moment came when I finally broke free of that judgment during Vipassana. And it coincided with something. And I won't go into tons of detail here. I think I might make a separate video on it. But it coincided with the reality that during Vipassana, before you learn Vipassana, you learn Anapana breathing, and that's breathing through your nose. And my whole life, I've had an issue breathing through my nose. And I was forced to reckon with it here. And it freaked me out in such a trauma state for 4 days that I actually thought I would die because I didn't know how to breathe. And so I was sitting in meditation thinking I was going to stop breathing. And the reason I'm sharing this with everyone is because I knew on some level that I wasn't going to stop breathing. Like, I could open my mouth, obviously, and take a breath. But I really wanted to get the idea of this particular style of breathing, which is strictly through your nose, because I knew that that's important. And it was so hard for me to do it. Like, it was one of the hardest things I've experienced. And when I got through it, I literally trained my body how to breathe again, because it wasn't breathing right probably most of my life. 38 years old right now, so, for a lot of years. And what I got to the root of was that I didn't trust myself to breathe. I didn't trust my body to breathe for me. So there's a big thing around trust and judgment that I learned that was big. And sitting in that pain versus running from it. And so in my life, I've had lots of things around addiction to work and to sugar and to food that have been aspects of recovery for me. And they've been so powerful. And so, sitting in that pain was another access point to just look at those things and to remember that everything's always changing. Like, that's part of what Vipassana teaches us, is that nothing ever stays the same. In fact, if you were to look at our bodies with little, tiny microscope, you would see that the cells are like bubbles, like popping and expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting. Like, everything is constantly changing all the time, every single moment. And what we resist most in life is change. And so what really this beautiful gift was for Vipassana is the recognition that everything's changing, and that we need to just return back to our breath, to breathing, and being okay with observing how things are, observing reality as we see it, even when we don't like it. And I would say that Vipassana was life-changing for me, and I don't use those words lightly. Know that, because we can all say that, oh my gosh, something was so life-changing. One of the things that made it life-changing is that I feel like I'm a different person. I trust myself on such a more deep level since leaving there. And I've also seen parts of myself since leaving there that I didn't know existed, that have been kind of operating my life in not the best ways, to be frank. It's almost like my subconscious childhood trauma was like laid over my life and kind of been operating from some of these wounds that I had that I didn't even realize were there. And so I'm feeling kind of vulnerable after Vipassana, and in a good way, you know. One of the things that I'll say is I relate a lot differently to my emotions. I have a way different perspective on intuition and the emotional self than I ever have before. And I have a way deeper respect for my body and what it's capable of in terms of healing. And that's a really big deal. And then one of the other things that I'll say, and then I'll wrap up, is that Vipassana really also taught me about commitment. Maybe that might be one of the biggest things, is not just a commitment to showing up there and commitment to 10 days of it, but a commitment across all areas of my life. Like, how do I really show up in commitment? And since I've been home, I haven't missed a day. I take that back. I just missed one day. So there's been, you know, since I've been home, there's been approximately, gosh, I don't know, 35 days or so. At the time recording this, I'm 35 days or so after Vipassana, and I've meditated all but one of those. Vipassana is great for 10 days, and I recommend it deeply to you. If you can make it happen in your schedule, do it. It will be very powerful. And what I'm realizing is that Vipassana just doesn't end when the retreat ends. It must continue to be a huge part of life in order to reap the deepest benefits of it. And it's all still unfolding. So anyway, I'm so grateful for you listening. Thanks for being here. I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to go. I realized there's one last thing I didn't share, so I'm wrapping up. But the cooks, there's volunteers that come to Vipassana, and they cook the food. Oh my goodness. The food is incredible. I love the food. And I think there's an aspect of this that I gotta share, of that you don't pay for Vipassana, right? You show up out of donation and out of service. And so there's such a gratitude for the fact that people showed up out of service to cook this food, that somebody had donated prior, and then I'm getting to eat it. And so breakfast and lunch were just incredible. And then for dinner, we ate fruit and we had tea. And that was enough. Like, it was just enough. And I felt really good in my body from that. And then I'm incredibly grateful right now. So cheers to all of you. Cheers to more silence and going inward and quiet. We all need to look inside a lot more right now. We really do. More introspection is necessary in this time of our world. So that way we can really show up and speak from a place of truth and vision and inclusiveness. All right, until next time, check out reneejane.com if you want more details on how we can connect, and to check out other videos and blogs. And I have some free goodies on there that will benefit you as well. I'll talk to you soon.